Hello, this is David Vose. This is August the 19th, 2012. It's a wonderful day here in New Mexico. Already can feel the cool breezes fall. Today I want to come to you and talk about the Bible and about salvation. I think it's the most important subject, not just in the Bible, but in our lives. Now I'm going to go through this very quickly because we've only got, like about 15 minutes. And that sounds like a long time, but I've got a lot to say. I'm going to have to probably do a lot of videos on this. But the Bible's a big subject, but let me go through it real quickly. There's a lot of information here. And if you're interested, as I am, about salvation, I'm not talking about a doctrine. I'm talking about truly being saved, feeling saved, receiving the Holy Spirit. What is it? Being blessed. Would you like to be blessed? Well, let's start at the beginning. Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden. God planted the garden. We didn't plant it. Very significant. Jesus says they've reaped where they have not planted. Jesus brings us back to a time when we produce 30, 60, or 100-fold. That's the days of the garden. Before the curse, when something happened and Adam and Eve did something, and it says the ground shall not produce but thorns and thistles. And by the sweat of your face you shall eat bread until you die. So basically death is the curse. But in the meantime, between now and death, we're going to toil and toil and toil. And there won't be any production, no blessings, no abundance. We'll have life, but not very abundant. But in the New Testament, we're told that we're going to have life, and that more abundantly. And Jesus said we will produce 10-fold or 100-fold. What's happened? We as Christians, we're not blessed. Not like that. We don't have, most of us are under a curse. We all die, but most of us are not having any blessings. Most of us are sick. Somebody in our family's dying. And our prayers aren't being answered. God planted the garden. We don't plant. When we're in a relationship with God, He provides. In the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve were naked, but they weren't ashamed. Later on in the New Testament, we find that these garments represent our righteousness. You see, Adam and Eve didn't have any righteousness. Let's go back for 1 second. When Jesus was told, good teacher, and He said, who is good but God? Nobody is good but God. So in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve were not good. When they were created, they were not good. Because it doesn't say that Adam and Eve and God were good, but it just says God. Only God. So Adam and Eve, they were not good, but yet they were not ashamed. Why? Because you don't have to be good. God doesn't require us to be good. God will provide our righteousness. It is God who will give us the robes of righteousness. And Paul says that we might be clothed upon and not be found naked. We'll be clothed upon with immortality. But it won't come from ourselves. The Apostle Paul says that we are saved by grace. A lot of people think that we're saved by our faith. But they don't realize that's very much like saying we're saved by works. There's people who believe you got to do all these, keep the law of God or whatever to be saved. We're going to be judged, and the good people are going to go to heaven, and the bad people are going to go to hell. But you got to do something. You got to keep the law of God. But think about it. If you believe, well, I don't have to keep the law of God. We're not under the law of God, but I've got to have faith. You're like, okay, trying to believe. I'm trying to believe. It seems like having faith is harder than keeping the law. Because at least when we had the law, we knew what we were supposed to do. Okay, I can't do this, and I can't do that, and I can't do this. At least, it's all out in the open. I did that. Okay, I don't make it. But with faith, you never know. You got faith or not. Evidently not, because we believe, we say, God, heal this cancer, or heal, do this, or do that. Give me a paycheck, or I need money for the rent. Nothing happens. So evidently our faith, it's more difficult to have faith than it is to have works. So what kind of a deal is that? We've replaced works with faith. Well, the answer is that God never said we're saved by faith. It can't be. James says faith and grace works the same thing. I'll show you my faith by my works, because faith leads to works. It's just kind of the same thing. But what Paul says is we're saved by grace. Now in English, grace, most people should know, it means free. Completely free out of God's own mercy. We have the word that's come down to us a couple of ways. Gratis, free gratis, that's grace. Or like in Spanish, gracias. Thank you, you're welcome, it's done, it's free. We're not saved by our faith. We're saved by our grace through faith. Now the reason we do it through faith, it's done by grace. We're already saved. But if I gave you a cake and I said, that's your cake and you can eat it, it'd be your cake and you could eat it. And eating a cake is easy. You just put it in your mouth. But if you're afraid to eat it, or if you don't know that it's yours, it doesn't do you a lot of good. You ever seen a dog that's afraid to eat because he's been beaten? A lot of us have been beaten by our churches and told that we've got to do this or that. We're scared. We don't have any. We still have the shame. But Jesus came to take away our guilt, to take away our shame, to clothe us with His own righteousness. We don't need our own righteousness. Let's go back to the Garden of Eden. What is it that caused Adam and Eve to leave the garden? To go running and hide and not be in God's presence. They ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Most people believe, and I did for years, for most of my life, that the tree of the knowledge of good and evil was some kind of a sin, like they went out and murdered somebody, killed somebody, raped somebody, stole, worshipped another god, did something wrong. But that's not what it means. It means what it says. They took knowledge. They partook of knowledge. What? Knowledge of killing somebody? No. They partook of the knowledge of good and evil to become like God. Through all their own effort, they tried to become good or evil on their own. They wanted to get their own righteousness. They wanted to be sustained by a tree that was from their self-sustenance. They wanted to sustain themselves, to become like God themselves. The sin was pride, arrogancy, and hypocrisy. Pride is the worst sin you can have. You've got to come before God knowing that He's God and that He's a rewarder of those who seek Him, that He's your Papa. You've got to come to Him as a little child, according to the Lord. Meaning that we cannot try to say, look, I've kept all these laws and I'm righteous and I deserve to be here. There was a woman who was washing the Lord's feet with her tears and wiping His feet with her hair. She was a prostitute. She was a great sinner, according to the views of the righteous, supposed righteous of the earth, the Pharisees. And she did it in the presence of a man who was a Pharisee, who said, why don't you realize this woman that's cleaning your feet is a great sinner? And here I am, you're a prophet and you don't realize this? And Jesus said, well, there was a master who had 2 servants, and one owed him thousands of dollars, and he forgave that one. And there was another one that just owed him a couple dollars, and he forgave that one. Who's going to love him more? And he says, well, the one that he forgave most, the thousands. And Jesus says, yes, and this woman here is a great sinner, and I've forgiven her, and she loves me with all of her heart. She's washing my feet with her tears. But you think you haven't done a whole lot wrong. You don't love me very much. You see, salvation is free. And it will cause us to have great love. The more He forgives, the more we'll love. You don't have to worry about being a better person or being like the Pharisee and making sure that you've kept all these laws or whatever. It means nothing. The only thing that means anything is that you've accepted. And you could see by this woman's tears that she had accepted with joy her salvation. And that's the way we're supposed to be. It's completely free. After the flood, mankind began to build a thing called the Tower of Babel. Why did they do it? To become like God, to reach God. How did they do it? By using brick. Well, in the law, it teaches us that God wanted us to use only rocks to build our altars, our spiritual, our edifices, our cities, because rocks were made by God. But He says, don't raise up a chisel. Don't make it hewn stone, where you've made it square and flat so it can sit straight and make it higher. Or don't use brick, because brick is mixed with straw and mud and bitumen. You put it together, you make these little flat bricks, and you can stack them real high. And that's what they were doing. They were building bricks to make a tower to reach God. The answer is it's the same thing as the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, to become like God. Mankind, through effort, through building bricks and making this and that and effort in our own ways and manners, man's way cannot reach God. Through human effort, we cannot reach God. So anything, you see a lot of religions that tell you that Babylon is a religious system or it's government or whatever, and it's kind of true. But what is government? Government is man-made control and man-made laws and human government. And we can't get anywhere with our own form of government. So we've got to reject Babylon. When they were leaving, crossing the Jordan to go into the land of Canaan to conquer it, they had conquered Jericho and they had conquered Ai, and when they did that, they were told to devote it completely to destruction. My little kitty trying to get up here. Well, after they conquered Ai and they moved on, they couldn't conquer anymore. They couldn't defeat the enemy, the demonic forces, and take back the land of promise. And they didn't know why, so they went to God, and God says, because there's somebody that took a Babylonian garment. I told you to devote everything to destruction. So when we're on our way to God's kingdom, to the blessings, and we've got to remember the old ways, the Babylonian system, the man-made efforts. It's got to go. We've got to burn it. All right? Human effort won't get us there. And if we try to hang on to any of our human effort, we're not going to make it. We can't conquer. We can only conquer in the name of the Lord. Remember that they put the Ark of the Covenant up. And they'd put the priest would carry the Ark of the Covenant in front, and they'd march. And that's how Jericho fell down. That's how they conquered the whole land of Canaan, with the Ark of the Covenant in front. With the Ark is the blessings of God, the Shekinah, the promise of God, and the believing. And that's how we're saved, is with the promises of God before us, and believing in God and taking the land. But we got to let go of the Babylonian garment. Anyway, I've got no more time. It's been 14 minutes and 37 seconds, and I've got to go. So I will continue this in the next video. This is David Vose signing out, saying we'll see you next time.